At the Military Technology Annual Conference, my colonel wife called a male intern, honey, in front of the entire command center. I pretended not to notice. As soon as the conference ended, my wife tried to take my arm, but I sidestepped and said, "Don't touch me. Go home with your husband." She panicked as the lights of the Military Technology Annual Conference came on. My colonel wife, Elena Carter, turned to that young intelligence officer named Marcus Brandt and smiled, saying in front of over 200 people from the entire command center, "Honey, grab my jacket for me." The entire venue fell silent for a moment, then quickly erupted into cheers. I, her real husband, stood in the corner, still holding the briefing draft she had asked me to prepare in advance. Marcus blushed, but didn't flinch. He reached out and took the military uniform jacket off Elena's shoulders. His movements as practiced as if he had done it many times before. He deliberately leaned close to Elena's ear and whispered, "Colonel Carter." Everyone heard that. "You can't back out now." The people around laughed even louder. Some slapped the table, some whistled, and some turned to look at me. No one in the command center knew that Elena and I had been married for 3 years. Back then, she said she had just taken over as head of the intelligence division, and the higher-ups were keeping a close eye on her. She didn't want anyone to think she had risen through her husband's influence. I believed her. I took off my wedding ring and put it in a drawer. I stayed up all night with her, worked through intelligence drills with her, and helped her save the nearly disbanded 7th Intelligence Division. But now, she sat at the center of the main table, wearing the deep blue military dress uniform I had given her, adorned with the custom earrings I had made for her, smiling and calling another man honey. I didn't rush forward. I didn't confront her. I just pulled out my phone and pressed the record button. In the frame, Marcus' hand rested on the back of Elena's chair. Elena didn't push him away. She even glanced up at him, a hint of indulgence in her eyes. Someone in the crowd whispered, "Marcus is so lucky. He just got transferred here. And the division chief already dotes on him like this." Another person chimed in, "What do you know? He's young and smooth-talking. Not like Lieutenant Colonel Noah, who always has a stern face. The division chief is probably tired of him by now." I heard it all. I didn't turn around. The host continued to stir things up with the microphone. "Since Colonel Carter already called you hubby, shouldn't Marcus make a statement tonight?" Marcus stood up, raised his glass, glanced at Elena first, then deliberately looked at me, a brief glance, but one that couldn't hide its provocation. He said, "I'm just a newly transferred intelligence officer. I wouldn't dare to presume to be a match for the director, but if the director is willing, of course, I'd be happy to stay by her side, both at work and in life." Applause broke out. Elena laughed and scolded him with a "cut the nonsense," but she didn't deny it. She didn't explain and she didn't even look at me. I saved the video and sent it to my personal encrypted email, then backed it up to the cloud. This wasn't the first time I'd noticed something off. A month ago, right after Marcus was transferred to the intelligence department, Elena assigned him to the Dark Star Intelligence Simulation Project team. 2 weeks ago, I found out he had used temporary permissions to download the project's core plan. 3 days ago, finance mistakenly sent me an expense report. Marcus had bought a watch worth over $18,000 with the reimbursement note reading gift for external liaison reception, and the approver was Elena. And tonight she called him hubby. The chain of evidence finally closed a link in the second half of the annual party. Elena had a couple of drinks, her face slightly flushed. Marcus sat beside her the whole time, fending off drinks for her, handing her tissues, and even tidying up the stray strands of her hair. I sat at another table, quietly finishing the last bite of my cold steak. Colleague Zhao Hang came over with a glass, lowering his voice. "Noah, don't take it to heart. The director was probably just joking." I looked up at him. His eyes darted away. I smiled. "You think that was a joke, too?" Zhao Hang didn't dare to answer. I put down my napkin and stood up. On stage, Elena was being toasted by several department heads with Marcus standing by her side like a dog whose master had just stroked its fur. Seeing me rise, he suddenly raised his voice. "Lieutenant Colonel Noah, won't you toast the director? Today marks the completion of the Dark Star project. And the director is the real hero." At his words, everyone at the table turned to look. The Dark Star project was an intelligence simulation system I had led my team to build over 9 grueling months. Elena only showed up for 10 minutes at the final signing, but in Marcus' mouth, she was the only hero. I raised my glass. Elena finally looked at me, a flicker of warning in her eyes. She was afraid I wouldn't give her face, afraid I'd call her out in public. I walked to the head table, set the glass down without drinking, and said, "Congratulations, Colonel Carter." Marcus chimed in with a smile. "Lieutenant Colonel Noah, you don't sound too happy." I looked at him, which I obviously saw that. Marcus's expression stiffened slightly. Elena frowned. "Noah White, everyone's in a good mood today. Don't spoil it." I nodded. "Fine." I turned and walked away. Behind me, someone chuckled quietly. Someone said I was petty. Someone muttered that technical officers just had no social skills. I reached the entrance of the command building. The night breeze blew away the lingering alcohol in my stomach. The driver pulled up in the car, mine and Elena's registered under her name, but the loan was paid by me and the driver's salary was also on me. Just as I was about to get in, Elena chased after me in her combat boots. Marcus following behind, still holding her military jacket. Elena reached out to take my arm, her voice low. "Haven't you made enough of a scene? Everyone in command is watching me." I sidestepped and her hand missed. She froze. I looked at her and said, word by word, "Don't touch me. Go home with your husband." The entrance fell silent instantly. Elena's face changed. And the smugness in Marcus' eyes faltered. Elena whispered, "Noah White, what do you mean by that?" I opened the car door, took her bag from the back seat, and handed it to Marcus. "Take care of Colonel Carter." Marcus didn't take it. I tossed the bag into his arms, turned, and got into another taxi. The moment the door closed, Elena finally panicked, slapping the window and calling my name. I didn't look back. My phone buzzed. A message from Chen Wang. He was the head of the legal department and one of the few people who knew the original authorization contract for the Dark Star project. He said, "The permission change you asked me to look into has results. Someone used your electronic signature to transfer the Dark Star core module to Marcus." I stared at the line and smiled. So, tonight's husband was just the appetizer. The real knife had already been slipped behind my back. I didn't go home. I had the driver stop the car at the command building. At 1:30 in the morning, only the 27th floor of the entire building still had its lights on. That was my office, the place where the first line of code for the Dark Star project was written. I swiped my card to enter and the system prompt sounded Noah White, Technical Lieutenant Colonel. All systems normal. Hearing those words, all systems normal, I suddenly found it ironic. Someone had already used my electronic signature to transfer the core modules. Yet my permission still showed as normal. The office was very quiet. I turned on the computer and first logged into the server backend to export the permission operation logs from the last 30 days. Marcus' temporary account appeared 19 times, 7 of which were late at night. And 3 login addresses came from the apartment registered under Elena's name. I had never lived in that apartment. Elena said it was a guest house and I never asked further. Now, the logs told me that Marcus had logged into my project backend from there in the middle of the night. I downloaded the records and made 2 backups. Then, I opened the electronic signature system. The application document was submitted at 11:47 p.m. last Friday. The content was simple. To cultivate new talent, Noah White voluntarily transfers the management authority of the Dark Star project's core modules to Marcus Brent, who will be responsible for subsequent upgrades and external presentations. The signature bore my name. The handwriting didn't match, but the electronic seal was genuine. I stared at the screen for 10 seconds, then dialed Chen Wang's number. He answered quickly. "You're at the command building." "Yeah, I figured as much." There was the sound of paper rustling on his end. This authorization application went through the department head special channel. The approver was Elena Carter. She bypassed legal review. I asked, "How did the electronic signature come about?" Chen Wang paused. "Did you lend your authorization USB key to Colonel Carter last month?" I remembered. Last month, Elena said there was a supplier renewal document that urgently needed a seal. She was in a meeting outside and asked me to leave the USB key in her office safe. I did. She said she would return it after using it. Later, she handed me an envelope saying the USB key was inside. I was rushing the Dark Star test at the time and didn't open it to check. I pulled the envelope from my drawer. It was empty. I let out a laugh. Chen Wang sighed on the other end of the line. "Noah White, this is no longer a marital quarrel. Forging authorization, transferring core technology. Management rules state if it's serious, it involves job embezzlement and military confidentiality violations. I know what you're planning to do. I looked at the wedding photo on the desk. In the picture, Elena leaned on my shoulder, smiling innocently. Back then, she wasn't a department head. Back then, the 7th Intelligence Division was on the verge of disbandment. She cried outside the command building, saying she didn't want to be transferred away by the higher-ups. I authorized the intelligence algorithm I had spent 5 years developing to the 7th Division and helped her climb out of debt. I thought marriage meant carrying the burden together, but now she was using the key I gave her to open my door for someone else. I said, "Don't move yet." Chen Wang was taken aback. "You're still going to endure this?" I saved a screenshot of the authorization application. I want to see how they perform tomorrow. After hanging up the phone, I took out the documents I had prepared in the drawer. A transfer request, a divorce agreement, and a notice of termination for the Darkstar Core algorithm authorization. I hadn't planned to use these 3 documents so soon. I had given Elena chances. The first time was when she brought Marcus into the project team. I reminded her that newcomers shouldn't have access to the core modules and she said I was stifling young talent. The second time was when Marcus presented the wrong algorithm logic at the weekly meeting and I corrected him on the spot. His eyes reddened and Elena scolded me afterward for not saving his face. The third time was when Marcus took the proposal I had written to meet a client but couldn't answer the details when asked. Elena in turn blamed me for not tutoring him in advance. Now there would be no fourth time. At 3 o'clock in the morning, I returned to the apartment. The living room light was on and Elena sat on the sofa with a grim expression. She hadn't changed out of her deep blue military dress uniform. Marcus wasn't there, but on the coffee table lay a man's tie, not mine. When Elena saw me, she immediately stood up. "Where have you been? I called you over 20 times. I pulled out my phone, which showed 27 missed calls. I didn't explain. Elena took a deep breath, softening her tone slightly. What happened tonight was my fault, but it was just a joke at the annual party. Marcus is young. Everyone was teasing. And I misspoke. I looked at her. Misspoke? She frowned. Noah White, are you really going to fixate on a single slip of the tongue at the party? I walked over to the coffee table and picked up the tie. Did you also misspeak and leave this behind? Her face stiffened. Marcus had too much to drink. I had the driver bring him up here to rest for a while. Rest long enough to leave his tie in our home. It's his souvenir. Her voice rose. Can you stop being so sarcastic? I tossed the tie back onto the table. I'm not being sarcastic. I'm just confirming. Bringing a subordinate back to our wedding home to rest also count as work necessity. Elena bit her lip. She feared this calmness of mine the most. She had ways to handle arguments and cold wars. But when I didn't argue or make a scene, she couldn't gauge how much patience I had left. She stepped closer, trying to take my hand. Noah, we've been married for 3 years. You should know me. There's nothing between Marcus and me. He's my junior. Just graduated. No connections. I only wanted to help him out. I looked at her hand, which wore a wedding ring with my name initials engraved on the inside. But tonight, that same hand had held Marcus' coat. I stepped back. Elena's hand fell empty again, and anger finally flickered in her eyes. Noah White, what exactly do you want from me? Was I supposed to explain to the command that you're my husband? Didn't you agree to keep our marriage a secret? Now you're using this to blame me? I nodded. I agreed to keep the marriage secret, but I didn't agree to let you call someone else a husband. She froze. I continued. I agreed to support you, but I didn't agree to let you use my electronic signature to pave the way for others. Elena's face changed drastically. You investigated me. I smiled. That sentence was clearer than any explanation. She didn't first ask what electronic signature. She asked if I had investigated her. I said, Elena, I'll be attending the project meeting at 9 o'clock tomorrow. You'd better think carefully whether you explain yourself or I explain for you. She stared at me, her eyes shifting from panic to weariness. Don't blow this out of proportion. I turned and walked into the study. Just before the door closed, she suddenly said, Noah White, you can't leave the 7th Division without the command platform. The Dark Star project means nothing. I stopped but didn't turn around. Then tomorrow we'll see who really can't do without whom. The study door closed and I heard the sound of a glass shattering in the living room. My phone vibrated again. Chen Wang had sent a second batch of information. It turned out that Marcus' watch wasn't a client gift. It had been charged to Elena's private supplementary card with the note reading, "Welcome bonus." Below that was a photo of Marcus wearing the watch arm around Elena standing on the apartment balcony with only one caption: "Thanks for the gift, darling." At 9 o'clock the next morning, the Dark Star Project regular meeting began on time. The conference room was packed. Elena sat at the head of the table with Marcus on her right, the seat that used to be mine. When I walked in, everyone looked up at me. Some were awkward, others watched with amusement. Marcus wore a new military uniform, and on his wrist was that watch worth over 18,000. When he saw me, he deliberately pushed his sleeve up a little. Elena's expression was cold. She didn't ask me to sit, and I didn't ask either. I pulled out a chair at the far end, sat down, and placed my laptop on the table. Elena got straight to the point. Today's meeting includes a personnel adjustment. Although Marcus has been here for a short time, he learns quickly and has received good client feedback. Starting today, he will serve as the Deputy Executive Director of the Dark Star Project, responsible for subsequent version development and client presentations. Sparse applause filled the room. I didn't move. Old Chen, the project manager, looked down at the table, and Amang, the testing lead, had a grim expression. They all knew who had built Dark Star, but no one dared to speak in front of Elena. Marcus stood up, smiling humbly. "Thank you for the trust, Director, and thank you all for your support, especially Lieutenant Colonel Noah. I'll need your guidance going forward." He emphasized the word guidance. I looked up at him. "Are you sure you want my guidance?" He smiled. "Of course, although the director said I can handle things independently. I'm still young. And Lieutenant Colonel Noah has more experience." Elena frowned. "Noah White. Marcus is showing you respect." I nodded. "Then let me start with a basic question." Marcus' smile faded slightly. I opened the conference room screen and projected the Dark Star system architecture diagram. The core scheduling model of Dark Star has 3 layers. The first handles real-time intelligence filtering. The second does path prediction. And the third handles resource allocation. Now that you're taking over as Deputy Executive Director, tell me why can the threshold rollback mechanism and the second layer run in parallel with the external interface? Marcus' face turned pale and the room fell silent. He opened his mouth. I looked at the materials yesterday. It should be because running in parallel would cause data latency. I looked at him. Wrong. Elena immediately interjected. Noah White. This is a regular meeting, not an exam. I ignored her. It wouldn't cause latency. It would cause data contamination. Latency can be solved with caching. But contamination directly leads to resource allocation errors. I wrote about this issue in the project log 3 weeks ago. Since you downloaded the core plan, why don't you even know this? The color drained from Marcus' face. Elena turned sharply to me. What do you mean? I clicked to the next page and the screen showed the back-end logs. Marcus' temporary account had 19 login records, 7 late-night visits, and 3 from his apartment. Gasps filled the room. Marcus immediately stood up. Lieutenant Colonel Noah, this is slander. I'm a project member. What's wrong with logging into the system? I said, logging in is fine, and downloading the core plan could be considered learning. But using my electronic signature to apply for permission transfer is not learning. I opened another authorization request and the document clearly stating I voluntarily transfer my permissions was displayed on the big screen. Everyone saw my electronic signature and also the approver Elena Carter. Elena's expression finally changed. She lowered her voice. Turn it off first. I looked at her. Why? This is an internal document from the command center and forging my signature is also an internal process. Marcus panicked. Don't slander me. The electronic signature is real and the process is real. Maybe Lieutenant Colonel Noah signed it himself and forgot. I looked at him whether I forgot or not. The Ushield usage records will tell. Chen Wang pushed the door open, holding a printed document in his hand. Elena's face darkened. Chen Wang, I didn't ask legal to attend the project meeting. Chen Wang placed the file on the table. Colonel Carter, this already involves authorization disputes. Legal must be present. Marcus clenched his fingers. I flipped the file to the second page. The last time the U-Shield was used last Friday at 11:46 p.m. Location, the director's office operator account, Elena Carter. The meeting room erupted. Elena stood up abruptly. Enough. She looked at me, anger and panic in her eyes. Noah White. Do you have to embarrass me in the command center? I looked at her calmly. When you called someone else husband at the command center's annual meeting, did you ever think about embarrassing me? When those words fell, the meeting room went so quiet you could hear the air conditioning. Some lowered their heads, others looked at Marcus. Marcus' face turned pale and flushed in turns. Elena gritted her teeth. That was just a joke. And this forged authorization. Was that a joke, too? She couldn't speak. I took out the first document and pushed it in front of her. This is my transfer request. Elena's pupils contracted. I took out the second. And this is the divorce agreement. The entire meeting room seemed to hit pause. I placed the third document on top. This is the pre-notice of termination for the Darkstar Core algorithm authorization. According to the original agreement, if the 7th Intelligence Office transfers, copies, modifies, or authorizes a third party to manage the core module without my written consent, I have the right to terminate the authorization with 30 days' notice. Elena's face turned pale, but Marcus still hadn't caught on. He sneered. Lieutenant Colonel Noah, who are you trying to scare with a transfer? The Dark Star project belongs to the command center. Not to you personally. I looked at him. Are you sure? Chen Wang projected a contract onto the screen. It was the technical authorization agreement signed 3 years ago between the 7th Intelligence Office and my personal lab, stating that the core algorithm's ownership belonged to Noah White personally, and the 7th Office only had usage rights. No one in the meeting room spoke anymore. Marcus' lips moved, but no sound came out. Elena stared at the contract as if seeing it for the first time, but she had signed it. She just forgot back then when she knelt before me crying and begging me to save the 7th Office. She had signed her name stroke by stroke. I stood up, packed my computer. Colonel Carter, you have 29 days. I turned and walked out. When I reached the door, the front desk rushed over. Colonel Carter, General Wong from the Joint Command has arrived and says he wants to see the real person in charge of the Dark Star project. Marcus jumped up as if grabbing a lifeline. I'll go greet him. But the front desk looked at me, her voice clear. The general said he only wants to see Lieutenant Colonel Noah White. The Joint Command is the largest partner in the Dark Star project. The contract amount is equivalent to $320 million, accounting for half of the 7th Intelligence Office's budget this year. On the day of signing, Elena stood on stage with the media photographing her and senior officials praising her. Everyone said she was the savior of the 7th Office. But the person who actually worked with the Joint Command's technical team for 7 months was me. General Wong doesn't like small talk. When he walked into the meeting room with his technical deputy and procurement director, his first words were, "Lieutenant Colonel Noah, I heard you're leaving the 7th Office." Elena immediately stood up with a smile. "General, you've misunderstood. It's just an internal position adjustment. Lieutenant Colonel Noah has been a bit emotionally unstable lately." Before I could speak, General Wong frowned. Emotionally unstable. Elena's smile froze. Marcus quickly stepped forward. "Hello, General. I'm Marcus Brent, the new Deputy Executive Director of the Dark Star Project. I'll be handling the liaison with your side from now on." He extended his hand. General Wong didn't shake it. He looked at me. "Lieutenant Colonel Noah, did you arrange this?" I said, "No." General Wong's face darkened. Everyone in the meeting room was standing. Marcus' hand hanging in midair, awkward as a joke. Elena quickly smoothed things over. "Marcus is someone I personally mentored. He's young but capable. Noah White will guide him during the transition period." General Wong sneered. "Colonel Carter, I bought the Dark Star system, not an intern development plan." These words made Elena's face turn pale. Marcus gritted his teeth and withdrew his hand. Elena glanced at me as if warning me not to undermine her. I sat down and opened my laptop. "General, today was originally a project meeting. I didn't know you were coming over temporarily. Is there something urgent?" General Wong placed a document on the table. "Our internal tests found serious issues with the new version you submitted last week. The path prediction module is 37% worse than the original version and the scheduling results show duplicate assignments. We want to know who made the changes." The meeting room fell silent instantly. I looked at Marcus. Marcus' face changed and Elena also turned to him. Marcus quickly explained, "This is just test environment fluctuation, not necessarily a version issue." The technical deputy behind General Wong connected his computer to the screen and projected several test reports. All the errors were concentrated in the second layer model, the same layer I had asked Marcus about earlier, which he got wrong. General Wong said coldly, "Our technical team reviewed it. The problem isn't fluctuation. Someone arbitrarily changed the threshold rollback mechanism. Lieutenant Colonel Noah, this isn't your style." I didn't answer. Immediately, I pulled up the code submission records. At 2:17 a.m. last Wednesday, Marcus submitted a version modification with the note optimize prediction response speed approved by Elena Carter. I projected the records onto the screen. Here's who made the changes. Marcus stood up abruptly. I optimized it as Colonel Carter requested. I only changed the parameters. I didn't expect it to have such a big impact. A man couldn't help but speak up. Lieutenant Colonel Noah had already marked that parameter as prohibited from individual modification. "Didn't you read the comments?" Marcus' face turned red. The comments were too complicated. It's normal for a newcomer to overlook them occasionally. I smiled. It's normal for a newcomer to overlook them, and it's also normal for a deputy executive director to overlook them. He was left speechless. Elena's face grew increasingly grim. General Wong looked at her. "Colonel Carter, is this your new person in charge?" Elena took a deep breath. "General, this was an internal management oversight on our part. I will handle it. The Dark Star project will not be affected." General Wong didn't respond to her. Instead, he looked at me. "Lieutenant Colonel Noah, if you leave this project, can it still be delivered on schedule?" Elena immediately said, "Of course it can," I said. "No." Both voices rang out at the same time. Elena whipped her head around to look at me. I said calmly, "The core algorithm authorization is still with me. The current version can run, but subsequent upgrades, bug fixes, and client customizations all require my authorization and confirmation. Without my consent, anyone modifying the core module constitutes a breach of contract." General Wong nodded. "Understood." He stood up. Elena was anxious. "General, what are you doing?" General Wong said. "The Joint Command is suspending the next phase of payment. Wait until the 7th Division provides us with a clear explanation. Who is the project lead? Whether the authorization is legal and how the version issues will be resolved." The color drained completely from Elena's face. A $320 million contract payment suspended. Senior management would definitely hold someone accountable. And all of this happened 20 minutes after I submitted my transfer request. General Wong stopped at the door and looked back at me. "Lieutenant Colonel Noah, the Joint Command has always recognized you. If you personally have a new cooperative entity in the future, you can have someone contact me." As soon as these words were spoken, everyone in the meeting room changed expressions. Elena stared at me intently, and the panic in Marcus' eyes could no longer be hidden. After General Wong left, Elena closed the meeting room door and said in a low voice, "Noah White, are you satisfied now?" I looked at her. The version was modified by him. "You knew full well that the general only recognized you. So why didn't you help the 7th Division smooth things over?" "I did help." I pointed to the code records on the screen. "Over 9 months, I helped you cover up all the technical loopholes, shielded you from senior management stouts, and helped you get through 3 rounds of price cuts by the Joint Command. Now you hand the project over to Marcus. Let him take my plan and modify my code. And when problems arise, you expect me to keep covering up." Elena's eyes reddened as if she wanted to use that expression to make me back down. Before, whenever her eyes reddened, I would stop, hand her a tissue, and say, "Forget it." This time, I didn't move. Marcus suddenly spoke up. "Lieutenant Colonel Noah, you don't need to bring personal feelings into work. The division chief just wanted to train me and you're going to destroy the entire project because of a joke last night." I turned to look at him. A joke last night. I opened my phone and pulled up a photo, a screenshot of his social media post. He was wearing the watch Elena had given him. Standing on his apartment balcony with the caption, "Thank you for the gift, darling." I placed the phone on the table. "And what about this?" Marcus's face turned pale. Elena reached out to grab the phone, but I took it back first. "Colonel Carter, don't touch my evidence." Her hand froze in midair. I looked at her, my voice very soft. From today on, let the lawyers handle all the talking. The meeting room door opened again. The senior management secretary stood at the door, looking tense. Colonel Carter, the general wants you and Lieutenant Colonel Noah to report to his office immediately. Elena's figure swayed. I knew the first domino had fallen. The general's office was on the 30th floor. General Carter sat behind his desk, his expression even darker than Elena's. He was Elena's father and the earliest investor in the 7th Intelligence Bureau. 3 years ago, when the Bureau was on the verge of disbanding, he refused to continue his support. He said Elena was too young to hold power. It was I who brought out the early prototype of Darkstar and secured the first cooperation order that changed his mind. Since then, he has been outwardly polite to me. But deep down, he has always seen me as a blade raised by the Carter family, useful, but not allowed to have a temper. When we entered, General Carter slammed a contract onto the desk. Noah White, what exactly do you mean by this? I looked at him. Transfer, divorce, and termination of unauthorized authorization. Elena's face turned pale. General Carter pounded the table. Nonsense. Taking out marital quarrels on a project. Do you have any sense of the bigger picture? I smiled. General, if you consider forging electronic signatures as a marital quarrel, then I have nothing to say. General Carter's eyes darkened. Of course, he knew how serious the issue was, but he was used to suppressing me. Elena said quietly, Dad, I'll handle this. General Carter glared at her. Handle it. The Joint Command has suspended payments, and the higher-ups are in an uproar. What are you going to handle it with? Elena bit her lip, turned to me, and lowered her voice. Noah, let's stabilize the project first. Okay, we can talk about the divorce at home. As for Marcus, I'll have him withdraw from the project team. Marcus standing outside the door heard this and his expression instantly changed. I glanced at him. Are you asking him to withdraw now because you realize you were wrong or because General Wong suspended the payments? Elena's eyes flickered, but she didn't answer. I understood. She wasn't regretting hurting me. She was only regretting that the matter had escalated to the higher-ups. General Carter said coldly. Noah White, don't go too far. Elena has treated you well over the years. The command center gave you the position of technical lieutenant colonel, a high salary and project subsidies, and now you're biting the hand that feeds you. I placed my phone on the table and opened a transfer record. When you say treated well, General, do you mean that half of my 3-year salary was funneled back to the 7th Division or that the licensing fees for my personal lab have been delayed indefinitely? General Carter's face stiffened. I opened a second document. This is the licensing fee the 7th Division owes my lab. $26 million in total. Colonel Carter said the budget was tight, so I never pressed for it. Elena lowered her head. I continued. This is Marcus reimbursement records for 3 months, totaling $48,000, including watches, apartment furnishings, a private driver, and custom suits, all approved by Elena Carter. General Carter turned sharply to his daughter. Have you lost your mind? Elena's face turned pale. Dad, I just wanted him to look presentable for clients. I said. Which client needed him to log into the core system from your apartment at dawn? General Carter's gaze turned ice cold. A slight noise came from outside the door and Marcus turned to leave. I spoke. Marcus, he stopped. I turned to look at him. Come in. Elena instinctively said, Noah, don't make a scene. I ignored her. Marcus walked in, forcing calm. Lieutenant Colonel Noah, don't keep bringing up the apartment as if there's something between the director and me. That day, I was just helping her organize files. And it was too late, so I used her network. I nodded. Then explain why you used her personal computer to log into my project backend. Marcus' face stiffened. I opened the third piece of evidence. The apartment network login records. Device name. Marcus MacBook. Login time 1:32 a.m. accessed files. Darkstar Core Module Parameter Descriptions. Joint Command Customized Pricing Models. Project Authorization Application Templates. Marcus' fingers clenched. Elena stared at the screen. Finally realizing I wasn't just holding emotional evidence. I had a chain that could nail them all. Marcus panicked. I was just learning. The director told me to grow quickly and I wanted to prove my ability. I said, so, you forged my authorization. Marcus immediately pointed at Elena. The shield was given to me by the director. I didn't know it was yours. The office fell dead silent. Elena turned sharply to him. Marcus realized he had slipped up and his face went white instantly. I said nothing, but General Carter understood. He looked at his daughter, his voice terrifyingly low. Did you really give him the shield? Elena's lips trembled. I just wanted him to get familiar with the process early. I didn't think he would. I let out a laugh. She was trying to cut ties now, but it was too late. I picked up the transfer request on the table. General, I'm not here to negotiate today. I'm here to inform you. In 30 days, the Dark Star Corps authorization will automatically terminate. If the 7th Division wants to continue using it, you can renegotiate the contract. General Carter stared at me. What are your conditions? I said, first, dismiss Marcus and conduct a public investigation into the forged authorization. Second, pay the overdue licensing fees owed to my lab. Third, Elena Carter will no longer participate in the Dark Star project. Fourth, the divorce agreement between Elena and me will be settled based on actual contributions to premarital and marital assets. Elena looked up sharply. Noah White, you're going all out. I looked at her when you brought Marcus into our marital home. Did you think that wasn't going all out? Her eyes reddened. He and I really didn't go that far, I said. That's your problem. Not a reason for me to keep enduring. Marcus suddenly dropped to his knees. Director, I was wrong. I just wanted to prove myself too badly. I had no ill intentions, and I never meant to take Noah's position. I looked at him. That's not what you said last night. I played the recording. After the annual party, Marcus' voice came through clearly from the hallway as he spoke to a colleague. What is Noah White anyway? The director will hand Dark Star over to me. Sooner or later, he's just an old technician who doesn't understand people. The director's been tired of him for a long time. The recording ended. Marcus knelt on the floor, his face as pale as a corpse. Elena closed her eyes. General Carter picked up the phone, his voice cold and hard. Notify HR to suspend all of Marcus' permissions. Notify audit to review all reimbursements and system access records from the past 3 months. Marcus jerked his head up. Director Elena didn't look at him. In that moment, she finally understood Marcus wasn't her husband, nor was he her future. He was just a pawn she used to provoke me and prove her independence. When a pawn gets into trouble, it's the first to be discarded. I turned and left the office. Elena chased after me, grabbing my sleeve at the elevator. Noah, I really know I was wrong. I looked down at her hand. Let go. She didn't. Her voice trembled. I was just so tired. Everyone says the 7th Division relies on you. That I'm just a figurehead as director. I didn't want to live in your shadow anymore. Marcus admired me. Listen to me. I cut her off. So you called him husband. Her fingers loosened. The elevator doors opened. And I stepped inside just before they closed. She said tearfully. You never used to treat me like this. I looked at her. You never used to hand someone a knife to stab me with. The elevator doors shut. My phone buzzed with an email. Chen Wang had sent preliminary audit results. Marcus hadn't just downloaded the Dark Star plan. He had also sent some materials to a competitive intelligence agency. My eyes turned cold. So, this betrayal wasn't just about marriage. They had nearly sold off my last trump card. The 7th Division had originally scheduled a launch event for Dark Star 2, a big spectacle. Elena had been preparing for 3 months. Media, clients, investors, and senior management were all invited. Marcus was supposed to give the core presentation using this event to officially transition from intern to project lead. Elena also planned to use it to prove that Dark Star doesn't rely solely on me. But after the audit began, all of Marcus' permissions were frozen. He panicked and so did Elena. The night before the launch, she came to my office. I was packing up my last batch of personal files. She stood at the door, her eyes red and swollen. Noah, the launch tomorrow can't go wrong. I didn't look up. So, you'll give the presentation, she said. I'll emphasize in my introduction that you're the core lead for Dark Star. Marcus won't appear. I laughed. Now, the director remembers I'm the core lead. Her face turned pale. I know you hate me, but hundreds of people in the 7th Division depend on this project for their livelihoods.
You can't let everyone suffer because of what's between us.
I paused what I was doing. She said that line too smoothly. Every time she made a mistake before, she'd bring up the employees and the bigger picture. As if my refusal to back down meant I wasn't considering the whole, I asked her, when you forged the authorization, did you think about those hundreds of employees? She was silent. When you let Marcus mess with the code, did you think about the client losses? Her eyes grew redder when you pushed me to the edge of the project. Did you think I was also part of the 7th Division? She finally broke down crying. I just wanted to prove myself. I looked at her. Proving yourself doesn't mean stepping on me to lift another man up. She was left speechless. I handed her a document. I can go on stage at tomorrow's press conference, but not as an employee of the 7th Division. Elena took the document and her face changed color. The moment she saw the title Temporary Technical Service Agreement with fees calculated by the hour, authorization limited to fixing display issues in the current version and excluding subsequent upgrades. Elena's fingers trembled. You're going to be this clear-cut with me? I said from the moment you called Marcus a hubby, we should have been clear. She stood there as if all strength had been drained from her. In the end, she still signed it. On the day of the press conference, the venue was packed. Media cameras were aimed at the stage. Elena wore a white suit, her makeup flawless, showing no signs of having cried the night before. Marcus wasn't seated in the guest section, but I knew he was there. He was hiding in the backstage corridor holding a laptop, his expression dark. When the press conference began, Elena took the stage to give a speech. She said the 7th Intelligence Division, after 3 years of refinement, had finally launched the Dark Star 2. She said the team was young, energetic, and innovative. She didn't mention my name. It wasn't until the demonstration segment that she paused next. The core technical lead for the Dark Star system, Lieutenant Colonel Noah White, will conduct the demonstration. Applause rang out from the audience. As I stepped onto the stage, I caught a glimpse of Marcus staring at me intently from backstage. I connected the equipment. The screen lit up and the system booted. The first phase ran normally. The second phase's path prediction was normal, and the third phase, just as resource allocation was about to be displayed, the screen suddenly went black. Exclamations arose from the audience. Elena's face changed and chaos broke out at the technical station. I looked down at the logs. Someone backstage was trying to forcibly switch the demo version. The account was a temporary administrator. I didn't need to guess who it was. Marcus. He wanted the press conference to fail. If the demo crashed, he could claim I sabotaged it and muddy the waters. Elena also realized what was happening. She looked toward the backstage, but Marcus was already gone. I didn't panic. I pressed the backup terminal and switched to a read-only mirror environment. The screen lit up again and the venue fell silent. I picked up the microphone. Someone just tried to switch the demo version to avoid disrupting the press conference. I'll continue with the demonstration, but after it's over, the 7th Division needs to provide an explanation to the clients and investors. Elena's face turned pale, and the media in the audience had already started filming. I continued operating. The Dark Star 2 ran fully with real-time intelligence cleaning, path prediction, resource allocation, and anomaly rollback, all completed smoothly. The final result appeared on the big screen. A 42% efficiency improvement. Thunderous applause filled the venue. General Wong, seated in the front row, nodded slowly. I let go of the mouse but didn't step down immediately. Elena looked at me, a flicker of pleading in her eyes. She wanted me to keep quiet, at least not here, but I had already given her too many chances to save face. I pulled up the back-end logs, and the record of the abnormal operation was projected onto the big screen. A temporary admin account created by Marcus Brent, approved by Elena Carter, created 2 hours before the press conference. The audience erupted in murmurs. Elena shot to her feet. I turned to her. Colonel Carter, how do you explain this account? The media lenses swung toward her. Her lips turned pale. Why did this backup account attempt to switch to the wrong version? She had no answer. I clicked to the second page. Marcus records of sending materials to a competitive intelligence agency's email in the early hours also appeared on the screen. File names. Darkstar Gen 2 Demo Flow. Core Parameter Explanation. Joint Command Customized Plan Excerpt. The crowd below was in complete uproar. General Wong stood up, his face ashen. Colonel Carter, your internal management has severely compromised client information security. The Joint Command demands an immediate breach review.
Elena swayed. I looked at everyone in the audience.
I personally reiterate that Marcus Brandt has never received my authorization for the core algorithm of Darkstar. Any actions to display, modify, or transfer it in his name are unrelated to me.
Elena's eyes reddened.
Marcus was still struggling as the security guards brought him out from backstage.
He shouted. The director made me do it. She said, Noah White was in the way. She said, if I performed well, I'd get the lieutenant colonel position.
All cameras were on him. Elena closed her eyes. The dignity she had fought hardest to preserve shattered completely.
In that moment, I walked off the stage.
As I passed her, she whispered, Noah White, don't go.
I didn't stop.
She reached out to grab me, but I sidestepped just like that night outside the hotel.
Her hand missed again.
Some in the audience recognized the move and others recalled how she had called Marcus husband that night. Low murmurs surged from all directions.
I left the venue.
Chin Wanong stood at the door handing me a new document.
High emergency meeting at 3 p.m. Colonel Carter requests your attendance.
I took the file which read accountability motion regarding major management negligence by Elena Carter, director of the 7th Intelligence Division.
I closed the file.
The second round of reckoning had begun on the day of the press conference incident.
The 7th Division trended on social media.
The headlines were harsh.
Director promotes young intelligence officer. Core project nearly leaked. An internal strife at 7th Division press conference. Real person in charge of Dark Star project revealed. Elena's photo was plastered on the news cover.
She in a white suit, her face pale with Marcus' abnormal operation record on the big screen behind her.
Marcus also went viral. People dug up his education, his resume, and that screenshot of his post. Thanks for the gift, dear.
The comments were brutal, but I didn't bother to read them.
I sat in the law firm organizing the divorce evidence item by item.
The lawyer, surnamed Ling, was my senior from university.
After reviewing the documents, he glanced at me and said, this isn't just a regular divorce.
It's a combination of marital property gift recovery, defamation, commercial licensing breach, and potential criminal risks all tied together.
I asked, how much can I recover? Lawyer Ling replied, for Marcus, watches, apartment furnishings, driver expenses, personal reimbursements. If we can prove they're linked to marital betrayal and improper benefit transfers, we can claim restitution for Elena. The focus is on joint assets and your personal licensing revenue. I nodded. Then go Alan. Lawyer Ling smiled. No mercy at all. I looked out the window. Last night, Elena sent me over 30 messages.
Ranging from explanations to apologies to reminiscing about the past to accusing me of being cold-blooded.
The last one came at 4 a.m. saying, Noah, I really didn't want to lose you. I didn't reply. Losing someone is never a single moment.
It was the first time she let Marcus sit in my seat.
The first time she said I didn't give young people a chance.
The first time she handed over my U-Shield. The first time she called another man husband in front of the entire command center after cutting away piece by piece.
She only realized people would leave. This isn't I didn't want to lose you. It's I thought you wouldn't leave. At 3:00 p.m. an emergency HILE meeting was convened. When I arrived, the atmosphere in the conference room was heavy.
General Carter sat at the head of the table, his face dark as thunder. Elena sat to his right, her eyes slightly swollen. Marcus was absent. He had been suspended and handed over to legal and audit investigations.
But I knew things wouldn't go so smoothly. Sure enough, as soon as the meeting began, Gowing, deputy director of the administrative office, stood up.
I believe the priority now is to stabilize public opinion and reassure clients.
Not to escalate internal conflicts.
Lieutenant Colonel Noah, though the core technical lead, publicly exposed internal issues at today's press conference, causing significant losses to the 7th Division. Elena remained silent, but the look she gave me carried a hint of expectation. She thought that by having someone shift the blame onto me,
I would back down. I looked at Gao Ming, Deputy Director Gao.
Are you saying that
Marcus leaking secrets isn't important, but my exposing it is the problem? Gowing's expression turned awkward. That's not what I mean.
I'm saying this could have been handled internally, I nodded.
Then let me ask you, were the abnormal accounts at the press conference site attempting to switch to the wrong version? A Mang from the tech department immediately replied, yes. If the switch had succeeded, would the Dark Star system have failed during the demonstration? Yes. And if the demonstration failed, would the Joint Command have directly triggered a breach of contract? Amang glanced at Elena before answering.
Yes, I turned back to Gowing. So, by making the logs public, I prevented further losses. You claim I caused losses to the 7th Division.
Please provide evidence. Gowing fell silent. Another senior executive spoke up. Lieutenant Colonel Noah, we acknowledge your technical contributions.
But has your personal relationship with Colonel Carter affected your judgment regarding the 7th Division?
Elena's expression shifted.
She hadn't expected the executives to directly bring up personal relationships. I pulled out a copy of our marriage certificate and placed it on the table. Elena Carter and I have been married for 3 years.
I am formally informing the leadership of this today.
A stir rippled through the conference room. General Carter closed his eyes. He had known all along, but the others hadn't.
I continued.
The marriage was Elena's idea to avoid any perception that she relied on her husband to advance her career.
I respected that. So for 3 years, I never interfered in the 7th Division's management as her husband.
But now she has used her authority as division head to redirect my personal authorization, project results, and technical permissions to a young intelligence officer with whom she has an ambiguous relationship. This is no longer a private matter.
Elena's tears fell. Marcus and I never had a real relationship. I looked at her.
So, calling him honey, buying him a watch, letting him stay in your apartment, giving him the deputy director position, all of that was charity.
Her face turned pale. General Carter barked enough. I didn't stop.
I projected the transfer records, reimbursement approvals, apartment access logs, permission requests, and the abnormal accounts from the press conference. Page by page, each one like a slap to Elena's face, and to everyone who had once sided with Marcus. Finally, I played an audio clip, a recording from the press conference's backstage surveillance.
Marcus said,
"As long as Noah White fails the demonstration today, the division head will have no choice but to use me. She won't let anything happen to me."
Another voice asked, "Aren't you afraid she'll actually hand you over?" Marcus laughed.
"When she calls me, honey, she's a lot gentler than she is with Noah White."
The conference room fell into a terrifying silence. Elena's tears stopped as if she was seeing Marcus clearly for the first time. I turned off the audio. "This is the person you cultivated." Elena's lips trembled violently. "I didn't know he would be like this."
I said, "You didn't know because you only wanted to hear him tell you how great you were.
You didn't want to hear me warn you about the risks."
Her face was ashen. At the end of the meeting, the senior leadership made 3 decisions.
First, suspend Elena Carter's full management authority over the Dark Star project.
Second, establish a special audit team to investigate the Marcus incident and related approval responsibilities. Third, appoint me as the independent technical lead for the Dark Star project, renegotiating the authorization with the 7th Division under my personal lab's name.
After hearing the results, Elena looked completely drained. As the meeting adjourned, she chased me to the elevator entrance. "Noah, let's talk." I pressed the elevator button. She blocked me. Her voice, "Are you really going to divorce me?" I looked at her. "Didn't you already find yourself a new husband?"
Tears suddenly streamed down her face.
That was an angry remark, a joke. I lost my mind.
The elevator doors opened and I stepped inside. She reached out to block the door.
"If I publicly admit you're my husband, publicly apologize to you, can you?" I cut her off. "Elena, a belated public acknowledgement isn't respect. It's damage control."
Her hand slowly lowered just before the elevator doors closed. I saw her standing there, finally stripped of the director's pride.
My phone rang. Lawyer Ling sent a message. "Marcus is turning on you.
He's filed a police report claiming you illegally accessed his computer, fabricated evidence, and that you deliberately framed him out of jealousy." I smiled when backed into a corner. People always like to call their own greed being ruined.
He wasn't ruined by me.
He was ruined by every reckless choice he made, every deliberate provocation he staged. News of Marcus' police report quickly reached the 7th Division. Some began to waver.
New theories emerged in the group chat. Could it really be that Noah White was jealous and deliberately went after Marcus? A technical lieutenant colonel could easily check the logs, right? Could the evidence be tampered with?
Maybe the director and Marcus really had nothing going on.
Husband was just a joke. Noah White overreacted. I looked at the screenshots without getting angry.
Chin Wanong sat across from me so furious. She set her coffee cup down hard. Are these people forgetting that Marcus leak records are right in front of them? I said, they haven't forgotten. They're just scared. Scared of what? Scared of admitting they backed the wrong side. The people who cheered at the year-end party, who applauded Marcus in meetings, who whispered behind my back about not understanding social dynamics. They all need a reason to prove they weren't that stupid. So, they're willing to believe I have issues, too. As long as I have issues, they're not accomplices, just misled. I flipped my phone face down on the table. Let them talk. Chin Wong frowned. You're not going to deal with it. I opened my laptop, but not by explaining. In the afternoon, the Military Disciplinary Department and a third-party digital forensics team arrived at the 7th Division. Marcus sat in the conference room, his eyes red, yet still putting on an act. The moment he saw me, he stood up. Lieutenant Colonel Noah, I know you hate me, but you can't ruin my life. I just graduated. I just want to do my job well. Elena sat nearby, her face pale. She glanced at Marcus, but there was no pity in her eyes anymore, only disgust and exhaustion. I pulled out a chair and sat down. Are you done? Marcus clenched his fists. The forensics team began checking the server back-end logs. Marcus' computer and the surveillance footage. Marcus had clearly prepared. His computer was spotless. Chat records deleted, emails wiped, and he had even preemptively formatted a hard drive partition. He looked at me, a hint of smugness returning to his eyes. Lieutenant Colonel Noah, you say I leaked information? Then please provide the original evidence. Screenshots and recordings can be forged. I nodded. Fair point. Elena looked at me, seeming a bit tense. She was afraid my chain of evidence would break and that this might backfire on her. I handed a USB drive to the forensics team. Marcus sneered. Another one of your own USB drives. Who knows where the stuff inside came from? I ignored him. When the forensics team opened it, it wasn't screenshots. It was the hash verification records of the server's original audit logs. Every operation when it occurred was simultaneously synced to a third-party security platform. The platform provider wasn't the 7th Division. It was a security audit company designated by the Joint Command. In other words, even if Marcus wiped his own computer, he couldn't alter the external evidence. His face gradually turned pale. I then produced a second piece of evidence, surveillance footage from the apartment elevator showing Marcus entering at 1:16 a.m. and leaving at 3:04 a.m. carrying a laptop bag. The third piece of evidence was the device connection log from the apartment's network operator. The fourth was the receipt confirmation from the Competitive Intelligence Agency's email server. The fifth was a complete recording of Marcus attempting to switch the presentation demo version using the backup admin account that Elena had approved. No one spoke in the conference room. Marcus' lips began to tremble. He looked at Elena. Director, say something for me. Those accounts were given to me by you and the apartment was your idea. You said you would protect me. Elena's head snapped up. When did I ever tell you to leak information? Marcus said urgently. You said that if I secured Darkstar, no one would ever dare say you relied on Noah White. You said Noah White was too domineering, suffocating you. You said you needed a technical lead who would completely listen to you. The last trace of color drained from Elena's face. I watched her calmly. I wasn't surprised by this. She didn't betray me because she loved Marcus, but because she needed someone who worshipped her, depended on her, and wouldn't point out her mistakes. Marcus gave her that illusion, and she bet her marriage, her projects, and the company on it. The forensics team continued their work. Marcus suddenly pointed at me. But Noah White isn't a good person either. He was planning to revoke my authorization long ago. He just wanted to force the director to submit. He never cared about the 7th Division. I said, I did care. I looked at Elena, but caring doesn't give you the right to steal from me. Elena's eyes reddened. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. At 6 o'clock in the evening, the preliminary forensic conclusion was reached. Marcus had engaged in unauthorized downloading and external distribution of project materials, maliciously interfered with the press conference, and sabotaged the demo environment. The issue of forged electronic signatures required further investigation to determine the respective responsibilities of Elena and Marcus. But one thing was clear, the evidence I provided had not been tampered with. The anonymous group chat fell completely silent. Half an hour later, the HR department issued an announcement. Marcus Brent was officially dismissed and the 7th Division reserved the right to pursue legal action. Elena Carter was suspended from her position as director pending a HIL review after the message was sent.
Zhao Hang sent me a WeChat message. Brother Noah, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have laughed.
At the annual meeting that day, I replied with 3 words.
Got it. Not forgiveness, just acknowledgement. That evening, I went home to pack my things. Elena was already waiting for me in the living room. She wasn't wearing makeup, looking utterly haggard. Nothing like the lofty department head she usually was.
On the coffee table lay the wedding ring and the tie Marcus had left behind. She had cut the tie to shreds. When she saw me come in, she stood up.
Noah, I've thrown away all his stuff. I didn't respond and walked straight into the bedroom to grab my suitcase. She followed me in.
I'll cooperate with the higher-ups and the investigation.
I'll recover everything Marcus bought. I'll make a public apology. I placed my clothes into the suitcase one by one.
Her voice began to tremble.
Can you just look at me, please?
I stopped, turned my head, and looked at her. Tears fell from her eyes.
I was wrong. I was really wrong. I didn't love him.
I just wanted so badly to prove that I wasn't relying on you.
I went astray.
I said, if you wanted to prove yourself, you could have done well on projects, led the team seriously, or learned to assess risks on your own. She nodded through her tears. I continued, but you chose the easiest way.
She froze. You chose to deny me.
Her tears fell even harder.
I closed the suitcase. Elena Carter, I am not your shadow.
You've been standing on my shoulders for so long that when you looked down and saw me, you thought I was blocking your light. She covered her mouth, unable to cry out loud. I pulled my suitcase toward the door. Suddenly, she hugged me from behind.
Don't go. I pried her fingers off. One by one. I'll submit the divorce cooling-off application tomorrow. She stood there.
I reached the door and suddenly stopped. Also, I'll apply for property division on the wedding house.
I won't live in a place Marcus has been.
The door closed inside.
Elena called my name.
This time I didn't look back as my car drove out of the neighborhood.
Lawyer Lean called. Noah White.
Marcus has confessed another thing.
Elena was planning to remove you from your technical lieutenant position at next week's HIL meeting and have him take over.
I watched the streetlights receding outside the window. So, they had already divided up my position. Then I'll show them what they tried to take from me was something I gave them in the first place on Monday. The 7th Division held an official high-level meeting. This time it wasn't a temporary accountability session, but a decision on Elena's fate. 2 rows of security guards stood at the meeting room entrance and the media was blocked downstairs. Employees went about their work as usual on the surface, but everyone was waiting for the result.
When I arrived, Elena was already seated inside.
She wore a dark gray suit, her face expressionless. In just a few days, she had visibly lost weight.
General Carter sat at the head of the table, flanked by external executives and audit representatives.
Marcus was also there under guard, seated at the far end. His face was ashen with dark circles under his eyes. And when he saw me, there was still venom in his gaze.
The meeting began.
The audit team first reported. Within 3 months, Marcus had fraudulently claimed $48,000 in expenses. Downloaded Darkstar project materials without authorization 16 times. Sent materials to external email accounts 3 times, and maliciously manipulated the demo environment once during the press conference.
In the process of forging electronic signatures, Elena provided the key. Marcus filled out the application and Elena overstepped her authority to approve.
Every detail was crystal clear. As Elena listened, her fingers kept gripping her pen, leaving a deep scratch on the paper. When it was her turn to speak, she stood up.
I admit to mismanagement and I also admit to making a wrong judgment regarding Marcus. I am willing to bear the corresponding responsibility. A senior executive sneered. Just a wrong judgment. Elena's face turned pale.
The senior executive continued. You brought personal emotions into project management, supported an intelligence contact to access core modules, bypassed legal approval, causing the client to suspend payments and the press conference to spiral out of control.
You call that a wrong judgment? Elena lowered her head. I accept the department's disciplinary action.
She offered no further defense. I could see she was trying to preserve a shred of dignity, but Marcus didn't want her to have any. When it was Marcus' turn,
He stood up abruptly. I admit I was wrong, but the director isn't innocent either. She approached me first. She said Noah White was immature. She said, if I listened to her, I could become a lieutenant colonel. Elena closed her eyes. Marcus continued shouting. She gave me a watch, the keys to her apartment, and made me act intimate with her at the annual party. She said she wanted Noah White to know that the 7th Division didn't need him. Everyone looked at Elena. Her face was ashen white. I wasn't surprised. People like him are sweet-tongued when things go their way, but the first to bite their master when the wind turns. General Carter roared. Shut up. Marcus' eyes were red. Why should I shut up now that something's gone wrong? You Carters want to throw me out alone. I just got transferred here. I didn't steal the U-Shield. I didn't approve the permissions and I didn't move into that apartment myself. Elena finally looked up, staring at Marcus, her voice very soft. So, you admit that at the annual party, you deliberately cooperated with me to provoke Noah White? Marcus was stunned. Elena smiled, a bitter smile. And you also admit that you knew Noah White and I were married? The meeting room fell silent again. I raised my eyes slightly. Marcus's face changed. He had been too hasty and forgotten this point. If he hadn't known I was Elena's husband, he could have played innocent. But he did know. Knowing that and still publicly accepting the title of husband, moving into the marital home and provoking me, that changed everything. Elena pulled out a recording, a conversation between her and Marcus. Marcus said, Director Lieutenant Colonel Noah looks at me so scarily. Does he misunderstand us? Elena said, he won't make a scene. Marcus chuckled softly. What if I really want him to misunderstand? Elena was silent for a few seconds, then said, don't go too far. The recording ended there. Elena looked at me. This is the only recording I kept. After that day, I should have immediately removed him from the project team, but I didn't. Tears fell from her eyes, but she didn't wipe them away. Noah White, I'm sorry. Everyone looked at me. I didn't respond. If apologies were useful, there would be no need for evidence. I opened my laptop since everyone has spoken. Let me add some material. The screen lit up. It was the personnel adjustment plan Elena had originally prepared to submit for next week. Revoke Noah White's position as technical lieutenant colonel, appoint Marcus Brent as the technical lead for the Dark Star project, transfer Noah White to a technical advisor role, no longer involved in project decision-making or approvals. The notes read, reduce reliance on individual technical expertise. Cultivate a young management echelon. Signed by Elena Carter. When Elena saw this document, her face turned ashen. This was the truth. She had never spoken. She hadn't just made a mistake. She had truly been ready to push me out. In the conference room, General Carter was so angry that his hands trembled. An external senior executive stood up directly. I proposed to remove Elena Carter from her position as director of the 7th Intelligence Division. She can retain her status as a senior intelligence officer, but will no longer be involved in daily operations. Another senior executive nodded in agreement. General Carter was silent for a long time and finally raised his hand. In agreement, Elena sat in place as if she hadn't heard. The director position she had managed for 3 years was taken away just like that. But I felt no satisfaction, only a calm sense of finality. After the vote, the senior executives passed a second motion, resigning the Dark Star technology licensing agreement with my personal laboratory. With fees calculated at market prices, the project leader would be appointed by me. The technical team would be managed by me, and the 7th Division was not authorized to change the core module manager without permission. I didn't sign immediately. General Carter looked at me. What other conditions do you have? I said a public statement. What the statement should clarify the ownership of the core technology of the Dark Star project, explain Marcus violations, and state that I never voluntarily transferred authority. General Carter frowned. This will make the 7th Division look bad. I looked at him. General, it looks bad because you did bad things, not because I'm asking for the truth to be told. General Carter's face turned pale, but in the end, he nodded. After the meeting, Marcus was taken away. As he passed by me, he suddenly stopped. Noah White, so what if you won? Elena has already rejected you. You're just a poor cuckold. The security guard restrained him. I looked at him and suddenly smiled. You're wrong. He froze. I'm the one who rejected her. The malice. Marcus' face stiffened. Elena stood not far away hearing these words and tears suddenly rolled down. I didn't look at her. I packed up my computer and walked out of the conference room downstairs in the lobby. The employees quieted down as they saw me come out. Before they looked at me as a tech commander who didn't fit in, but now they looked at me like someone who had finally stepped out of the shadows. Zhao Hang stood among the crowd and whispered, "Brother Noah." I nodded and kept walking. At the entrance of the 7th Division, General Wang's assistant was waiting for me.
"Mr. Noah, the general would like to discuss an independent collaboration with you."
I took the business card. Behind me came the sound of leather shoes. Elena caught up. "Noah," I stopped. She stood a few steps away. Her voice choked. "Can we really not go back?" I looked at her. "Elena Carter. The night you called him. Honey, we couldn't go back." Her face turned pale. I turned and got into the car. The door closed and she stood there growing smaller and smaller in the distance. This time, she finally didn't chase after me. After the divorce cooling off period began, Elena sent me messages every day. Have you eaten?" In the morning, an old photo at noon and a long apology at night. I didn't reply to a single one. Lawyer Ling said she's cooperating with the asset liquidation now, but she's still stalling on the divorce itself. I said she can't stall forever. He nodded. "We have enough evidence. Her substantial gifts to Marcus during the marriage can be claimed back. The forged authorization and dereliction of duty will also affect the property division negotiations." I signed the documents. Follow the procedure. Divorce doesn't need emotions. It needs a checklist. Real estate, vehicles, deposits, equity, licensing fees, marital debts, reclaimed gifts, item by item. I used to think marriage was a home. Now I realize that when someone starts to betray, marriage first turns into a ledger. Who gave how much? Who took how much? Who pretended not to see? It's all recorded. On the 10th day of the cooling off period, Elena asked to meet me. The location was the cafe where we first discussed the Dark Star project. I didn't want to go at first, but then Chin Wanong sent me new information. "You'd better see her. There's another layer to the relationship between Marcus and the Competitive Intelligence Agency." When I arrived at the cafe, Elena was already sitting by the window. She wasn't in uniform, just wearing a beige trench coat. Seeing me, she stood up. "You're here." I sat down. "Yeah." A flicker of pain crossed her eyes. I wouldn't have spoken to her like this before. Before, when she was sick, I'd ask if she was cold. Now, even when she cried, I only wanted to look at the documents. She pushed a file toward me. "I found this from Marcus' old computer." His approach to me wasn't a coincidence. I opened it. Inside were chat records between Marcus and the marketing director of the Competitive Intelligence Agency. 3 months ago, before Marcus was transferred to the 7th Division, he had already contacted them. They told him to find a way into the Dark Star project and obtain the technical data. Marcus said Elena is my senior and she's most afraid of others saying she relies on Noah White. I'll exploit that. I read on. Marcus added, "She needs someone who admires her. As long as I'm obedient enough, she'll give me a chance." There were a few more screenshots. Marcus sent to the other party on his first day at work. Elena really fell for it. I told her she's the most capable female director I've ever met, and she smiled. I closed the file after reading it. Elena's tears had already fallen. "Noah, I'm stupid. I know I'm stupid, but I really never thought he was after the project." I looked at her. "Him going after the project and you betraying your marriage are two different things." Her face turned pale. "I know," I said. "You weren't deceived by him. You gave him the opportunity first, and only then did he have the chance to deceive you." She covered her eyes. There weren't many people in the cafe, and a light rain was falling outside the window. I suddenly remembered 3 years ago on a similarly rainy day, Elena sitting in the same seat, eyes red, asking me, "Noah, if one day no one believes me, would you believe me?" I said, "Yes, later." I did believe her many times. So many times that even she forgot. Trust can also be exhausted. Elena took a small box out of her bag. Inside was my shield, the real one. She pushed it toward me. "I've never dared to return it to you." I looked at the black shield, but didn't touch it. Her voice choked. "When I got it last month, I just wanted to let Marcus familiarize himself with the process. I thought I could control it. I didn't expect. I interrupted her. You did expect it. She looked up. I said, you just don't want to admit it. She froze. You knew it was wrong to give him the U-Shield. You knew it was wrong to bypass legal. You knew it was wrong for him to sit in my seat. And you knew it was wrong to call him honey. But every time you chose the answer that was more comfortable for you, she finally sobbed. Noah, can I really still make things right? I looked at her. You can make things right for the project, for the client, for your own judgment, but not for me. The glimmer of hope in her eyes died out again. She sat there as if she had aged several years. In an instant, I stood up. She frantically grabbed my sleeve. Don't go. I still have something to say. I looked down at her hand. She trembled and slowly let go. I said, you've said enough already. What about you? She asked, looking up at me. Is there anything you want to say to me? I was silent for a few seconds. Yes. She held her breath. Get back what Marcus took. That's marital property, not your money to pay for a lesson. Elena's face turned as white as paper. She thought I would say hate, regret, or something that still carried warmth. But I only talked about settling accounts. That's crueler than hate. I walked out of the cafe. The rain falling on the umbrella, the sound very soft, my phone buzzed. A message from General Wong. Mr. Noah, the independent cooperation agreement is ready. Just waiting for your confirmation. The new company entity, I replied. White Laboratory officially launching next week. After sending this message, I set Elena's chat to mute, not blocking her, just finally too tired to look on the day the divorce cooling off period ended. Elena arrived early at the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau. She was wearing an overcoat the same color as the one she wore on our wedding day. Except that day, she was smiling and holding my arm. Today, she stood at the bottom of the steps, clutching the divorce agreement, her fingertips white. When I arrived, she looked up at me. Noah, I nodded. Lawyer Ling and her lawyer were both there. The process was quick. The property division had already been settled. The marital home would be sold and divided according to the actual capital contribution ratio. With me getting back most of the principal, the watch, apartment expenses, driver fees, and personal reimbursements Elena had gifted to Marcus during the marriage would be compensated by her first to cover the loss of marital property. And then she could seek recourse from Marcus. The licensing fees owed by the 7th Department to my lab would be paid in 3 installments. The new Darkstar licensing agreement had already been resigned with my lab. Marcus was cut off by the Competitive Intelligence Agency, held accountable by the 7th Department and faced a leak lawsuit. He tried to use a woman to climb up, but in the end couldn't even keep his transfer credentials. When the staff member was verifying the information, Elena kept looking at me. Do both parties agree to the divorce voluntarily? I said voluntarily. Elena didn't answer immediately. The staff member asked again and her tears fell as she said voluntarily. The steel stamp came down and the red booklet was exchanged for another kind of certificate. Legally, we were finally no longer connected. As we walked out of the Civil Affairs Bureau, Elena suddenly called out to me. Noah White. I stopped. She handed me a box. Inside were the wedding rings. I know you won't want them, but I still wanted to return them to you. I didn't take them, throw them away. Her eyes flickered with pain. Do you really have no regrets at all? I looked at her. I did have regrets. Her tears fell again. I continued, but not anymore. Nearby, a young couple who had just gotten their marriage certificate passed by. The girl laughing as she held up the red booklet for a photo. Elena watched them as if seeing herself from 3 years ago. She suddenly said, if I hadn't called him hubby at that year-end party, would we not have ended up like this? I shook my head. No, she froze that night. Just let me finally hear the voice. What really pushed us to this point was every time before that when you chose to ignore the boundaries. She lowered her head, crying so hard her shoulders trembled. I didn't offer a tissue, didn't comfort her, didn't say, take care. I turned and walked toward the roadside. General Wong's car was already waiting there. This afternoon, White Labs and the Joint Command officially signed an independent cooperation agreement. The Darkstar 2nd generation would be split into a new version independently serving the Joint Command and other clients. I was no longer the silent technical lieutenant colonel of the 7th Division, nor the invisible husband behind Elena. The car door opened and just as I was about to get in, hurried footsteps came from behind.
Elena ran over, her face pale, almost unable to stand.
"Noah, can I have one last hug?" I looked at her for a moment. I thought of many things from the past.
Of her eating instant noodles in our rented apartment while crying and revising intelligence deduction reports. Of her throwing herself into my arms excitedly when she signed her first client. Of her saying on the day we got our marriage certificate, "From now on, you are my backbone." But later she turned that backbone into a constraint, took companionship for granted, and saw my concessions as a guarantee that I would never leave.
I stepped back. "Don't touch me." She was stunned.
I looked at her and finished the belated farewell.
"Go find your hubby."
The color drained completely from her face. Those words had circled back to us from the entrance of that hotel that night. Only this time, she no longer had the right to panic and explain.
I got into the car.
The car started in the rear view mirror. She stood at the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau, the wedding ring box falling to the ground, the lid opening, and 2 rings rolling out.
No one picked them up.
At 3 o'clock in the afternoon in the Joint Command Conference Room, General Wong signed the contract with me personally. The contract amount was 20% higher than the original version from the 7th Division because this time the client wasn't just buying the system but also clear technical ownership,
a stable point of contact, and a complete authorization boundary.
After signing, General Wong raised his teacup.
"Mr. Noah, congratulations on starting anew." I clinked my cup with his. "It's not starting anew." He looked at me. I said it's taking back what was originally mine. After the meeting, I received an announcement from the 7th Division. Elena Carter officially stepped down as director, retaining
only the position of senior intelligence officer with a new director appointed from an external professional manager.
At the end of the announcement, the 7th Division publicly acknowledged that
the core technology of Darkstar belonged to White Labs and apologized to clients and partners for previous management errors.
After this announcement was made, many former colleagues sent me messages. Some apologized, some congratulated me, and some tentatively asked if they could join my lab.
I only replied to a few who truly got things done. Ang, Old Chen, and 2 engineers who had always held the line.
That evening, I held the first team meeting in my new office.
The office wasn't large with a panoramic view of the city nightscape outside the glass window. There was no champagne tower on the table, no fake applause, just a few computers, some contracts, and a group of people willing to do things right.
At the end of the meeting, Amang asked me, "Brother Noah, what should we call our new project?"
I thought for a moment, Dawn.
She smiled. "That's nice."
I looked out the window, the city lights shone calmly.
It was nice.
Not because anyone regretted anything, but because I no longer had to prove I deserved respect. I always had that confidence within myself. 6 months later, the Dawn system officially launched. The first batch of trial data from the Joint Command came in. Efficiency was 51% higher than the old version of Darkstar.
Industry media came to interview us on their own initiative.
And this time the cameras only captured me and my team. No one stood in the spotlight taking credit for others' work. No one pretended to sacrifice behind the scenes.
A reporter asked me, "Mr. Noah, you've been through a major collaboration fallout before. Do you regret going independent now?" I thought for a moment, no regrets.
The reporter was a bit surprised. I said, "Adults make choices and accept the consequences."
That's true for collaboration and it's true for marriage. After the interview aired, Elena sent me a message. "I saw the interview. You're doing well now." I didn't reply.
She sent another message.
"The 7th Division has stabilized recently, too.
Marcus' case is almost settled.
He'll have to pay compensation and will have a criminal record.
The Competitive Intelligence Agency has been blacklisted by the Joint Command. The marketing director has been taken in for investigation." I still didn't respond to any of her messages.
After a while, she sent one last message. "Noah, I finally understand. You weren't holding me down before. You were holding me up."
I looked at those words and felt nothing inside my heart. Understanding too late is just a summary, not compensation. I turned off my phone and continued reviewing the new version report submitted by the team.
Life began to simplify.
I had mornings at the lab, lunches with the team, and occasional evenings at my parents' house.
My parents had never known that Elena and I were married.
After learning about the divorce, my mom was silent for a long time.
She finally said, "It's good to have you back."
My dad was more direct and ladled me a bowl of warm soup.
In life, it's not falling that matters. It's falling at someone else's feet and not getting up. I smiled softly. I'm already up.
Later, Joe Hang invited me out for a meal to talk things through. He raised his glass with a flushed face.
Brother Noah, I was really in the wrong that night at the annual party.
I knew you were hurting, but I still told you not to take it to heart. The truth is, I was afraid of offending the director. I said calmly, you don't need to explain yourself to me.
He gave a bitter and helpless smile. I know you won't forgive me.
I looked straight at him and spoke my true thoughts.
I don't hate you.
He was visibly stunned by my plain response.
I just won't trust you with important work in the future.
These words hurt him more than any harsh scolding.
Between adults, sometimes you do not need a fierce falling out. You simply cross someone off your list of trusted people.
The day Marcus' verdict came down, Chen Wadong sent me the news link of the final judgment.
Marcus was ordered to pay compensation and bear criminal liability for trade secret infringement and fraud.
The luxury watch worth over $10,000 was recovered and auctioned off.
The apartment costs were also included in the recovery.
He cried in court, claiming that he had only been used and manipulated by Elena from the start.
The judge asked him, so you admit that knowing the other party was married, you still used an ambiguous relationship to gain project access?
He fell completely silent and had no excuse to defend himself.
Elena also attended the trial in person.
The media captured her standing alone outside the courthouse, pale-faced, with no assistant or driver by her side. The once celebrated department head had finally learned to face her own mess all by herself.
I did not attend the trial. There was no need for me to show up.
My personal battlefield had long come to an end.
The next time I saw Elena was at an industry forum.
I stood on stage as the person in charge of the Dawn system to deliver a speech. She sat quietly in the third row, looking thinner than before and far calmer than in the past. After the speech ended, many people crowded around me to exchange business cards and seek cooperation. She stood outside the crowd and did not take the initiative to approach me at all. When the crowd finally thinned out, she walked slowly toward me.
Noah White. I looked at her quietly. Do you have something on your mind?
She smiled bitterly and shook her head. No, I just wanted to say congratulations and thank you to you in person. Her eyes were still faintly red.
I'm only in charge of basic operations now. I no longer manage core strategic projects. My father has also stepped down from his position.
The 7th Division has been handed over to professional managers. I used to think I had to stand at the highest position to prove my worth.
Now I know position is never equal to ability.
Being able to bear your own consequences is the real growth.
I nodded slightly in response. That's good. She seemed to have more to say, but finally asked softly, will you ever get married again? I looked at her without giving any answer. She let out a self-deprecating smile. Sorry, I shouldn't have asked that question.
I spoke gently, Elena, just move forward. My tone was extremely calm, without hatred, without love, and without any lingering entanglement.
She finally understood the thorough separation between us. She nodded softly, okay. She turned around and left.
This time, she did not look back, and neither did I. After the forum ended, General Wong invited me to a dinner party, but I politely declined. I returned to the lab and found my team still staying late to work overtime. They munched on steamed buns while debugging the system. Old Chen and a new engineer were arguing over a piece of program logic. When they spotted me, they immediately called me over to check the latest test results. I took off my suit jacket and sat down in front of the computer. The screen displayed perfect data from the new Dawn system version.
Amang excitedly slapped the table. Brother Noah, this result is solid and reliable.
I stared at the stable system running prompt and suddenly smiled to myself.
I once hid my own light to illuminate another person's brilliant stage.
Yet on that very stage, she called someone else her husband.
Everyone thought I would endure the grievance forever.
They thought I could never leave her, the 7th Division, or that fixed position. But they all forgot the truth. I wrote the core system, built the project from scratch, and paved every step of the way.
I could lift a nearly disbanded intelligence division back to its feet.
I could also pull myself out of a rotten marriage. At 11 p.m., the lab lights were still brightly lit.
I stood by the window and overlooked the entire city.
My phone suddenly vibrated with a message from an unfamiliar number.
The text content was extremely short. Noah White.
This is Marcus.
After I got out, I had nothing left. Elena ruined me, and you ruined me too.
I read the message and deleted it without hesitation.
People always like to blame their own greed on others' ruin. He was not ruined by me. He was ruined by every risky gamble and every deliberate provocation he made. He fell because he repeatedly reached for fame and benefits that never belonged to him. A moment later, Elena also sent me a message. Marcus may harass you. Please be careful. I have already filed a police report for your protection. This time, I only replied two simple words. Received. She did not send any more messages for a very long time. After 10 minutes, she replied again, "Thank you for still being willing to respond to me." I did not open or reply to her subsequent message. The next morning, I sorted out all her old photos in my phone. I exported them, saved them to a hard drive, and sealed the drive inside an archive box. It was not that I could not bear to delete the memories. I simply acknowledged those years truly happened. Acknowledging the past is not turning back. Sealing away memories is not nostalgia. It is drawing a clear and complete boundary between my past and my future. A month after the Dawn system was officially launched, we successfully secured our second major client. The team held a simple celebration dinner with no extravagant champagne towers or ambiguous jokes. As everyone raised their glasses, Amang shouted loudly, "To Brother Noah! To Dawn!" I raised my glass and clinked it with everyone's, making a clear and crisp sound. At that moment, I suddenly recalled that night half a year ago at the hotel entrance. Elena reached out to hold my arm, but I sidestepped away and said, "Don't touch me. Go home with your husband." That sentence was the first cut I made to end our entanglement, and also the first step I took to save myself. Looking back now, I am not most grateful for defeating Marcus or taking back my project. I am not even most grateful for Elena finally falling into regret. What I cherish most is that night I chose not to pretend ignorance. I refused to endure silently. I refused to trade my dignity for a meaningless explanation from a betrayer. After the dinner ended, I walked out of the restaurant alone. The night breeze carried a slight chill. I draped my jacket over my arm and walked slowly toward the parking lot. The city lights spread all over the road, like a brand new and clean path stretching forward. I knew new projects, new collaborations, and a brand new life were waiting for me ahead. There might even be new relationships in the days to come. But I would never hide my talent and achievements for anyone again. I would never swallow humiliation for the so-called overall interests. I would never let someone who once called another man husband touch my hand again. I pulled open the car door and sat in the driver's seat. My phone screen lit up suddenly. The Dawn system backend pushed an operation report, with only 2 words displayed in the status bar. Stable. I smiled gently and started the car engine. The road ahead was wide open, with all green lights on. This time, I would never stand silently behind anyone else's shadow again.